radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
All right, good evening, Fade to Black. Today is Wednesday, August 16th, 2023. I'm Jimmy Church. I am the host of this gig. Let's do this, man. All right, help support the show. Get your Fade to Black T-shirts. The new ones are out. We released them on Monday, hand-drawn by comic artist Michael A. Von Oming. That's right. You can check out the shirts. The links are below. And help support us and what we do here by getting yourself an autographed Fade to Black T-shirt. Always remember, shipping is included. Okay, links are below. Tonight, Timothy Alberino is with us. He's back. And we're going to cover quite a bit tonight, but the main focus is going to be what, I call this show tonight, the alien invasion in Peru. It's nuts what the reports are coming out of Peru. I have watched the videos. So has Timothy, and he spent a lot of time there. And as everybody knows, I'm on my way to Peru. I'm not going to be going anywhere near this particular village, but I'm on my way down there. And I'm very interested to see how the media and the people down there are looking at this situation. And now, Timothy, he's an author, right? He's an explorer. He's a researcher. He's got a lot of knowledge on all of these topics. And one of the things, not only with UFOs and ET and contact and megalithic structures and all of those things, but he understands the Bible and the religious aspects of this as well, and looking at the two of them very pragmatically and with objectivity. And it's just an honor and a privilege to have Timothy back with us. His links are below over on social media and, of course, on our website. And I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black, the one and only Timothy Alberino. There he is right there. How you doing, Timothy? Everything good?
Very good to be back with you, Jimmy. Everything is just fine.
I'm on my way to Peru, man.
What part of Peru are you going to? I just got back from Peru.
Yeah, I'm doing, this is my first time down there. So I'm doing all of the normal things. I'm heading down with Brian Forrester. And
okay.
Yep, I'm going to be hosting a tour with him. And so we're going to do the normal stuff. We're going to do Nazca. That's a highlight for me, the plane and observing all of that. But Machu Picchu, Pumapunku, Tiwanaku, Cusco, the normal stops. And for me, because it's my first trip, you got to get the main stuff out of the way. Next time I'm down there, I'll get off the beaten path a little bit, but I've got to get the bucket list stuff checked off first.
Well, you won't be disappointed. Peru is a very, very interesting country. Those locations that you'll be visiting are highly intriguing. Some of the finest cyclopean megalithic architecture on planet Earth.
I just got back from Egypt, and when you have an interest in the subject, like you and I have, right? And it's one thing to see the documentaries or read the books and interview people and hang out with friends and talk. But when you go and you see this stuff, with your own eyeballs, that's the paradigm shift. That's where the books and the photographs and the things, they're all great, but they don't do the subject justice. And I know Pumapunku, when I first became aware of it, and I'm looking at the H blocks and considering the altitude and everything else, without a written language or things at your disposal to replicate those blocks, it's one of those things. Now, I've only seen it in pictures, right? But to be able to go and see it firsthand, I just can't wait.
Yes, Pumapunku is a fascinating site. Bolivia is an interesting country, and it's certainly an interesting journey to go from Peru into Bolivia. I assume you're going by road over the border. That's always, as I said, a very interesting experience. But those are you talk about putting your hands on the stone rather than just looking at pictures. Those sites will leave a long lasting impact on you, especially I would say Saksaiwaman. Saksaiwaman, when you stand in front of those megalithic walls, they're just it rearranges the furniture in your brain.
It does.
It's just the immensity of those walls, the precision with which they were built, the precise anti-seismic technology employed in the foundation of those walls. It's really quite remarkable. Yeah, and you got a great guide in Brian Forster.
Yeah, Brian's amazing. He's such a cool guy. The fascinating part for me, yes, the odd shapes, the giant, 50, 100-ton crazy cut blocks, and the precision, how they're all laid out. But it's not a defensive structure. You know what I mean? It's what was its purpose? And how do you talk? Timothy, this is how my brain works. How do you talk? If you're the leader of the village, right, or the town, you're the guy. How do you talk everybody into building that? Right? How do you convince them? I know everybody needs to eat, and everybody needs to survive the night. Okay, I get that, but let's build a wall.
Yeah, not only let's build a wall, let's build a wall with unnecessarily large stones that are a pain in the ass to move.
Yes.
Yeah. Because they could have easily built that wall with smaller stones.
And and what's even crazy? Well, okay, there's two crazy parts to that for me. Number one, we know the approximate age of it, and we also know where the stones came from. 30 miles over those hills, right? Now, how are you moving a 200-ton block over those hills that long ago? Just somebody just help me out here, because I'm a little confused.
You can drag large stones with a whole lot of people. You can. But how do they carve them out of the rock? That's a very interesting question, because the tools that they had were copper chisels primarily. Maybe they had some bronze, maybe some form of bronze. But the stone is harder than the copper. And even if you can carve a little bit, let's say you can make some headway with copper chisels, it would be such a pain in the neck that you would think that everybody would say, yeah, let's just do this with smaller stones. Why are we doing this? This doesn't make any sense. So whoever built those walls did it because it wasn't that ridiculously difficult for them. It wasn't. However they did it, whoever it was relatively simple for them to do. Relatively simple. And by the way, I'm in my mind as we're talking, I'm envisioning Saksaiwaman. Saksaiwaman in Peru, in Cusco, obviously it's attributed to the Inca, but no Inca king has ever claimed to lay a single stone at Saksaiwaman. But I know for a fact that it wasn't built by the Inca, because my colleague Anselm P. Rambla, who's a Spanish researcher and explorer who actually did excavations, legal excavations at Saksaiwaman, he found in the lower levels of Saksaiwaman, down under the ground, he found pre-Incan artifacts. So at the lower levels of Saksaiwaman, you don't have Inca artifacts, you have pre-Inca artifacts. So that right there should be enough definitive proof that the Inca didn't build it, they found it. And then they built on top of it, they repaired it.
Yeah. And when you see, and that was good, that was my second point, and you just touched upon it. So you have that aspect, right? How are you going to convince people to build a monstrosity like that for whatever purpose? There's that. But the second is when you go and you look at the stages of the original construction, then you see the Inca layer, then you see the Spanish layer, right? Good, not so good, pretty crappy, right? you see the differences. And if the Incas were advanced, I get that, right?
Very much so. Yes.
But they weren't as advanced as what they were building on.
The Inca were not any more advanced than the Romans, and the Romans were certainly more advanced than the Inca in many aspects. But the Inca were comparable to the Romans in that they were very good. They were very good engineers. They could build excellent roads. They could build amazing aqueducts, and they were good masons. They could build very good structures, much better than any of the other native people that were their neighbors. But neither the Inca nor, in my estimation, the Romans could have built the megaliths in Peru. We're talking about we're talking about the enormity, the scale of the materials that are used, the stones. But that's the least impressive thing about these walls. When you go to Ollantaytambo, you are going to be witnessing what I believe is the most exquisite cyclopean architecture on the planet. It is so perfect, so beautifully designed, that I don't think there's anything that we have built in the modern age that rivals those walls at Saksaiwaman. And I'm talking about the original megalithic layer, because you're going to see at Saksaiwaman various styles. And while you're at Saksaiwaman, and Brian will probably point this out to you, while you're at Saksaiwaman, because you're going to, you said you're going into Bolivia to Pumapunku, I want you to notice the fingerprints of the Tiwanaku civilization at Pumapunku and Tiwanaku in Bolivia. I want you to notice their fingerprints all over Cusco, all over Ollantaytambo, because I believe it's the same lost civilization that built all of that. You're going to see the same styles. You're going to see the same interlocking block configurations. You're going to see the same. You're going to see the same metal clamps. And at Ollantaytambo,
right, that hold the blocks together, right?
Yes,
right.
And at Ollantaytambo, you have like 3 separate megalithic styles all combined together. That's why Ollantaytambo is my favorite site to study. You have 3. You have the polygonal megalithic, which is representative of the walls of Saksaiwaman and Cusco, right? And in the streets of Cusco, the polygonal. But then you also have you were mentioning the H blocks. You have those 90-degree angle cut stones interlocking from Tiwanaku, right? And then you have what is very clearly Inca, inferior Inca, and the Inca are evidently attempting to copy the superior techniques and capabilities of those who came before them. And by the way, the archaeologists know this. The Inca do not claim to be the builders of the megaliths. They actually present themselves as the inheritors, not directly, but indirectly. They believe that they were the children of the gods. And when we talk about the Inca, keep in mind that the Inca were not representative of all the natives under their dominion. Rather, the Inca were a bloodline. The Inca were a royal family. Only they were the Inca. Everybody else was the other tribes that were subjugated to them. Only that royal bloodline was the Inca. Brian Forster believes that there were elongated skulls among that bloodline. I tend to agree, but they were certainly taller than the other natives. They had distinct features. Atahualpa, who was the Sapa Inca. Sapa Inca means like the king, the Inca king, the Sapa Inca. He was the Sapa Inca when Pizarro landed in on the shores of Ecuador, and Atahualpa is depicted with a mustache.
Yes,
So,
yes.
And so it's very, very bizarre. So keep in mind that the Inca bloodline is different. There's some very strange anomalies going on there, and they claim to be the children of the gods, the children of the sun, or the offspring of Viracocha, and they were basically demigods. And when they came to Cusco and they saw these megalithic constructions, what they thought was the gods lived here. This is where our ancestors, this is where the gods lived. And so we are going to re-inhabit what is our inheritance, our legacy, and we're going to rebuild. In fact, that's why, Machu Picchu wasn't called Machu Picchu, it was called Ijampu. And Ijampu means the abode of the gods. So I believe the Inca found Ijampu, and they said the gods. This must have been a retreat of the gods. We're going to rebuild it, and this is going to be a retreat of their offspring, us, their progeny. We're going to rebuild, re-inhabit, and live like the gods. That's what you're seeing.
Now, can we stay there for a second?
Sure.
The reasons. And we really don't know, but I like what you just suggested there. I mean, why Machu Picchu, right? Like the most difficult thing to get to, first off, right, and then to build it. But to suggest that there was something already there, is that what you're saying? That the Incas arrived
yes, I believe
there?
that the Inca found it, and were just as amazed as we are today, perhaps even more so. They discovered these megalithic foundations, and you'll clearly see at Machu Picchu. When you go to Machu Picchu, I've been there like 7 times. Right. When you go to Machu Picchu, you're going to see a very clear delineation between the construction style. So you're going to see a wall in which the bottom layer is clearly Cyclopean, polygonal megalithic, right? And beautifully constructed. And then on top of it, there's like this attempt to copy it with smaller stones and much, much cruder. And I was walking one time with one of the guides, and we're walking, and he's giving me the usual, the usual story regarding Machu Picchu and the Inca and so forth. And I just stopped them and I pointed across across the field, and I said, that wall there obviously has 2 different styles of construction there. Well, the bottom is much superior to the top, which is clearly inferior. I said, is that a reconstruction? He said, no, that's the way the wall was. Okay. Why did they do that? Why did they build with this beautiful precision on the bottom with these polygonal cut stones, and then just do this crappy thing on top? And you know what he told me? He looked at me with a straight face and he said, because that's the way they liked to do it.
That's what the presenters of dogma say. They don't have something. I don't want to use the word factual, right? But they don't present data. Their answer is that's the way it was. Wait a minute, that's not good.
It's just the way it is.
Yeah, it's the way it is.
But I challenged him on that, and I said, really? I mean, that's it. That's the explanation. That's the way they like to do it. Don't you find that a bit simplistic? So by the time we got all the way back around to we walked through the whole site, and we got to the end. And I was just walking and chatting with me and Anselm Pirambla, actually, walking and chatting with this guy. Really nice guy. He wasn't like some arrogant guy. He was just really nice. And by the end, he's standing there looking at this site, shaking his head like, yeah, you might be right about that. Because I said, you archaeologist, or he's not an archaeologist, he was a guide, an official guide. I said, the archaeologists, the problem is they all have tunnel vision. They come and they look at a site like Machu Picchu, and they're looking at Machu Picchu they're viewing it in isolation, because most of them are isolationists. And they're viewing it in isolation, and they're saying, oh, this is the Andean people who did this. Because why? Because it's in the Andes. So it must be the Andean people. It must be the pre-Inca cultures or the Inca or whatever. They don't look at Machu Picchu and say, hang on a minute, and then go over and look at Japan, and then go over and look at Malta, and then go over and look at Egypt and say, wait a minute. This looks like the same builders. This looks like the same ubiquitous knowledge, the same technology. They don't do that. It's almost like they're not allowed to do that. They're not trained to do that, and they don't want to go beyond the bounds of what's permissible, because it's it's their career. They want to get a retirement out of this thing, right?
Yeah. What you see that in Egypt too as well. And you've been there, and you see the official guides, right? Okay, so I'm observing. I'm leading this tour. So, and I've got my Egyptologist friends with us helping, but they are the open-minded version of Egyptologists. Right. But when you look at the other tour guides, they all have these blue folders, right? They're all reading from the same thing, right?
They literally have the script.
They have a script. And I was watching, this group over here, and I'm listening to what they're saying, and they're reading off a page, right? And they're reading the exact same thing and presenting that, and that's the way it is, and it's their job. I get that. You want to get to retirement age,
exactly, right? Yeah.
And they're not going to drive off the road.
You want to be esteemed by your colleagues, and so forth. And I was this last time I was in Machu Picchu, which was in June, actually, the end of June. I was with a friend of mine named Andres Hadasme, who is an archaeoastronomer. And Andres and I, we have the same perspective when it comes to the megaliths in Peru. We believe that they were built by a lost civilization, before a great cataclysm obliterated this civilization and basically destroyed almost all evidence of its existence except for these megalithic foundations. And so we are standing at a point in Machu Picchu. We're standing on this wall, and we've got our little group around us because we were leading a group. And I'm talking about how the Intihuatana, which is the hitching post of the sun. You'll see the Intihuatana in Machu Picchu. It's this. They call it a sundial. It's. I'm sure you've seen it online. It's like this carved stone, and they say it's a sundial, and it probably is. It takes measurements of the sun, and so they think that this is an Incan astronomical device, right? Or Inca, perhaps even pre-Inca, whatever. It's up there in Machu Picchu. The problem is, they just found one in Turkey, and it looks almost exactly the same. It's got some variation, and of course, you would expect it to have variation if it's measuring the sun, the movement of the sun, because it's in a different part of the world, right? So I'm saying this to the group, and we weren't allowed to go up to the Intihuatana because it's closed apparently in the afternoon. You can only see it in the morning. If you go in the afternoon, they for some reason they rope it off. I don't know why. And so we weren't able to go up there. And so I'm telling my group, up there is the Intihuatana, the hitching post of the sun. And I'm explaining it. I'm saying, you know what? It's thought of as sort of a trademark Inca device, right? Problem is, it's found in Turkey. I'm saying that. And there is this guide standing there. This one of the official guides and guards. Really, he's more than a guide. He's like one of the guards that's on site. And he's listening, and he stops us, and he interrupts us. He stops us. He's, whoa. He said, who are you? Who are you? And he said, what do you mean, who am I? He said, are you a guide? Are you an official guide? Are you licensed here? And I'm like, no. Well, then what gives you the authority to say these things? You don't have the authority to say these things. You shouldn't be saying these things. You're leading a group. You're acting as a guide. You're not allowed to do that. You have to be permitted and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, this is just a group of people who've come here with me, and I'm telling them my opinion. I'm entitled to have whatever freaking opinion I want, right? And he was just incensed. Like, I thought for sure he was going to kick us out. He was making phone calls, and luckily we did have one of the old guides. He was retired, but everybody there knows him. We had him with us, and because he's so well known, he was able to talk our way out of this problem, because I thought for sure we were getting kicked out of Machu Picchu just because I was saying that there's an Intihuatana in Turkey. That's it.
You know, and there's I'm going to bring up two things. Number one, when the Spanish arrived at Tiwanaku, right, and they see what's going on there, and they ask, and they walk over. Pumapunku's quarter mile away, right, and they're looking at this, and who built this? Did you? No, the gods, right? And that's yeah. And that's as far back as the knowledge goes. You know, we have the documentation from the Spanish, we have the indigenous cultures there, but who actually built it, we don't know. And that's the fascinating part. And the second point that I want to circle back to what you mentioned earlier, not only about Turkey and Machu Picchu, but the styles of the stonework found throughout the world. When you look at the modern pictures of Tiwanaku, and you look at the boats, and you look at the architecture, and you look at the colors, it's Egyptian. It's got there's an Egyptian. Look at the tour boats at Tiwanaku. They look like the same boats that are on the Nile.
Exactly. That's right. The reed boats, and more specifically, they look like the reed boats of the Mesopotamians in general. They look like the 100%. Phoenician reed boats that were used in Sardinia. I mean, did it just occur to build these boats in the exact same way? And you remember that you'll recall that Thor Heyerdahl, the famous explorer, he wanted to build a reed boat to see if you could set off from the shores of Africa and reach the New World, right? Yeah. And who did he bring to build those boats initially? He brought Peruvians. He brought the not the Quechua people, the Aymara people from Lake Titicaca to build the boats. Because why? Because there weren't any Egyptians around who remembered how to build them. So he brought in the guys. He did 2 trips that did know how to build them because they still remembered, and they were from Peru.
That's right. He did 2 trips. He did one from the coast of Peru into Polynesia, right? And wanted to see if that was possible. That was the first trip. And the second trip, the name of the boat.
The first one was Kontiki. That was the one to Easter Island.
And then Kontiki 2.
And then he did the Ra, which was which went over to the New World. And indeed, he succeeded. Well, the Peruvian boat had some problems, but then they made they later had a different team, and they made some modifications, and they successfully sailed that thing, just a straw boat, a reed boat. They sailed it to Barbados, which is the New World. They made it to the New World, and all they did was follow the trade winds and the currents. They were in the New World.
It was funny when it pulled into Barbados, it was half sinking, right?
That's right. Yeah, it was in it was in pretty pitiable shape.
Yeah,
but they made it. They were alive, right?
They made it. Those guys were in rough shape. But that I am fascinated about that part of it, where the historians, and we do need to actually talk about ET tonight, but I love this conversation. Is that the historians and the anthropologists and the archaeologists and those with PhDs and all the accreditations to allow themselves to speak about this, they don't want to talk about a trans-oceanic culture sharing information. They don't want to do it.
No, because they're isolationists. They believe that each culture on each continent developed in isolation, that they did not have contact with each other. I made a film recently that hasn't been published yet, but it's not a film. It's actually it's a series, and it's one of the episodes in the series. I think we proved definitive. By the way, we're in Peru. I think we proved definitively that the Paracas culture is not native to South America, that it came from over the sea. And we have Moche pottery And the Moche civilization, which was contemporary with Paracas, with the Paracas culture, they were up further north, but they were on the coast. They were, by the way, very violent civilization. They were very much like the Aztecs. You know, there's lots of depictions of them taking slaves with those like wooden neck chain things, whatever, you know, that you saw in the movie Apocalypto. There's depictions of that, and lots of slavery and lots of human sacrifice. The Moche were not great people, but they were phenomenal artisans. You know, the Moche pottery, if you look it up online, it's very pornographic, actually, a lot of it, but it's very detailed. And they were especially good at detailing faces, really good at detailing faces. Famously good at detailing faces. And we have a lot of Moche pottery. There's a lot of Moche pottery in Peru because they made a lot of pottery. And I saw a private collection, and I know it was real because I was with the curator, who was an archaeologist, very well known. And he was showing us these pieces in Moche pottery. And we're looking at Moche pottery depicting the faces of Asians, clearly, depicting the faces of what look like Egyptians, depicting the faces of bearded Europeans, white bearded Europeans. This is a culture that's contemporary with Paracas, so like 3 BC to like 2 AD, somewhere in that neighborhood. Okay, bearded Norsemen is what it looks like. You've got black Africans, so Africans from more of the southern part of the continent, and then you've got the lighter skinned Egyptian Africans. You have an apparently an Arabian with a turban. This is Moche pottery.
Yeah, and the wall in Tiwanaku at the temple, you know, with all the faces.
Yes, the sunken temple.
Yeah, the sunken temple. There's one that even looks like an alien gray, right? And
it's just very weathered. It just looks like it was a regular human face. That was
regular human face, exactly. But it's fascinating to look at. But how is it possible to have every race of human, right, from every continent
depicted
on the walls? Yeah. I mean, it's and you've got
and who's in the middle? Who's in the middle of that sunken temple? Right there in the middle, a statue, Viracocha, with his big beard. Right in the middle, you have the monolith of Viracocha. Okay. Why is that significant? Because the natives didn't grow beards, and here's a bearded man in the middle of their sunken temple. And the Viracochas, this legend in the Andes of the Viracochas, these were the gods, right? That there's a whole interesting story of the Viracochas. But this is the reason why both the Inca and the Aztec were so easily defeated by the Spaniards. Why? Because they both of them initially thought that these were the bearded gods returning from over the sea.
Can you? I have heard. So let me just ask you. I've heard a few times that the natives referred to these bearded gods as having red hair and fair skin.
Yes, fair skin, blondish, red hair. So right. Yeah, but a lot of times it's blonde hair, clear eyes, so green or blue eyes. Like it feels like they're describing like ancient Sumerians or something, because they're garbed in robes and sandals in some stories, and depicted exactly the same, by the way, in Mexico and Peru by the Aztec and by the Inca.
And the bowl that was found on site there, right? That looks like it's got Sumerian text
in Bolivia. Yes, I don't know a whole lot about that, but I have seen it online, and it does appear to have cuneiform in it. But I don't know if it's been authenticated or what. But let's just say allegedly there was a bowl with cuneiform discovered in Tiwanaku.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm using the word Tiwanaku and Tiwanaku. They're both accurate. They're both accurate terms. Tiwanaku is more like the ancient term. Tiwanaku is the actual village. So those terms are interchangeable.
And okay. See, I could do this all night with you. It's my favorite subject, and we'll wrap this up, and we'll start talking about where we are with ET right now. But what's your best guess for the suppression of trying to get at this knowledge, trying to get at prehistory?
Okay.
Why the resistance?
Yeah, okay. Resistance is a better word than cover up, because I wouldn't say there's a blatant cover up. I would say that there's this lethargic resistance. And the resistance is based primarily, first and foremost, on what we mentioned a few moments ago. That is, these individuals, these anthropologists, these historians, these archaeologists, they have a vested interest in maintaining the status quo. Because if they try and buck the status quo, they're ostracized. And these guys, they pay a lot of money to go to school, and also it's their own hubris. I mean, you're going to look at a Peruvian archaeologist or even a guide who went to school to be a guide, and you're going to say to him, no, you got this all wrong. The Inca didn't build these foundations. Well, if he acknowledges that you're right, then what was all his schooling worth? It's just I don't think that these guys are they have nothing to gain. They have nothing to gain. The only gain, the only furtherance of their career, the only esteem that they're going to get from their colleagues is if they toe the line. That's it. You go outside of the line, you're a pseudo historian, you're a pseudo archaeologist, you're a pseudo intellectual. If you go outside of those parameters, so that is and don't underestimate the power of that. Let's call it intimidation, right? To color within the lines, let's say. Don't underestimate that. That's a big deal. These guys spend their whole lives becoming an archaeologist or becoming a professor of history or whatever. So they have this deeply seated vested interest to continue to propagate the narrative. That's one thing. The second thing would be that you would have to rewrite, to some extent, the history of the ancient world. If isolationism is wrong and diffusionism is correct, in other words, populations were diffusing across the globe, they were crossing the oceans, they were interacting with each other, there was a sharing of knowledge, then you got it all wrong. Your history books are all wrong. I mean, I would say very important aspects of those history books are wrong. These cultures did not develop in isolation, and it leads to other very intriguing questions, right? And that's a rabbit hole that these guys do not want to go down, because they lose the narrative. People who have these professionals, these professors, these archaeologists, these anthropologists, their identity is wrapped up in the mastery of their knowledge. Their very identity is wrapped up in it. And if they have to come to terms that they're wrong and have been wrong and that their institutions are wrong, then it's like you're not just telling them, oh, no, you're wrong about this detail, let's change that. You're taking a shot at who they are. You're taking a shot at their intellectual integrity and so forth. And it's just, it would have to be, to change that narrative, there would have to be such overwhelming evidence that they would all look really bad if they tried to hide it and reject it. Now, that's not to say that there isn't hiding going on. I absolutely believe there is obfuscation of artifacts. I definitely believe that's been going on. I do happen to believe that the Smithsonian was confiscating the bones of giants in the mounds of America back in the 1800s. Absolutely, I believe that they were. I believe that the Smithsonian does, in fact, have probably underground facilities where these bones are stored to this day, and probably also Egyptian artifacts from the Grand Canyon and so forth. Can I prove it? No, but I suspect that it's true.
The definitive proof that tipped everything over, I'm speaking specifically of Gobekli Tepe. And so when you look at the history books, and nothing has changed, right? That civilization started in Mesopotamia and started in Egypt. There was nothing before 3000 BC, nothing to see here move on. present something that predates the megalithic structures on the Giza Plateau, and then we'll have a conversation. Well, Gobekli Tepe shows up. It's 7,000 years older than Giza, not 100 years, not a
Somewhere
couple of
around
weeks.
10,000 BC. Yep.
Yeah, right. 7,000 years, and that wasn't enough. And when there's a video of Zahi Hawass in an argument with Graham Hancock.
I've seen it.
And
yes.
they're doing the sound check for their presentation. And poor Robert Bauval is at the mic. He needs to sound check and go through his presentation he wants to do with Orion and stuff. And Bauval is great. And he wanted to talk about Gobekli Tepe. And Zahi Hawass says, "What these Gobekli Tepe that you're talking about? I know nothing about it." Right. It's like, what do you? And that is exactly your point. He cannot admit the existence of Gobekli Tepe because it ruins the Giza money train.
That's a great way to put it. The Giza money train, and that is the final point here. Money. These guys need to get their projects funded. They need to get their excavations funded. And that comes from the institutions. That comes from the ministries of culture. That comes from the universities. And the guys that become the stars in these fields, they accrue a lot of power. They have a lot of control. They're usually, what's the term? I'm probably going to blow it.
Megalomaniacs.
Yes,
Megalomaniacs.
That's what I'm reaching for. They have huge egos. Is what I'm trying to. They have huge egos.
Right.
And so, he's the king of the castle there. He's the king of the castle. That's as far as that dude's concerned. Those pyramids belong to him. Those are his. That's his attitude. That's the way he approaches it. And so as long as guys like that are the gatekeepers, and in Peru, you're running the same thing, Machu Picchu and Cusco, you're running the same thing with the Ministry of Culture guys. As long as those people are the gatekeepers, nothing of import, nothing that cuts against the grain will ever be accepted or presented or taken seriously because the gatekeepers are corrupt. And Egypt, some of the stuff in Egypt is just so, as I said earlier, is just so reminiscent of Peru, the stuff in Peru. To not draw a correlation between the two is insane to me. It's insane. It's intellectually dishonest at the very least.
And the only explanation, if there wasn't some kind of contact or a master teacher that was, boating around teaching everybody how to quarry stone, aside from that, it must be something that's programmed in our DNA. Because
like a conscious, like sort of a collective conscious download of the same kind of technology at the same time. Yeah, it's very intriguing. But then there's also and I know Graham Hancock holds this position, that there's also the potential of a lost civilization from which there were survivors.
And that's what I was referring to. Yeah, it's a master teacher.
Right, who were able to transmit this information to more primitive peoples who developed, who all received the same information and then, developed it in sort of the same way, but put their own flair and style on it. That's why in Central and South America, you have this very unique pre-Columbian, the pre-Columbian motif, right? Well, that's very unique to anything that you find in let's say the Mediterranean or Mesopotamia. It's a very unique style. So, but when you look at a lot of the things that they built, the things that they inherited, you're seeing the same. You're seeing this finger, as Graham Hancock would say and does say in his book, what he believes are the fingerprints of the gods, i.e., this advanced civilization that predated them all and that was destroyed in a cataclysm. And I do definitely subscribe to that idea.
Yeah. And that's what would be more frightening to the world? Okay, what would be more frightening? The knowledge that there was a civilization predating us, right? existing, right? Atlantis, whatever you want to say, it doesn't matter. 1,000,000 years ago, 500,000 years, that, or that ET is visiting this planet. What would freak out the world more? And I would subscribe to an ancient version of us, some high-tech civilization. I think people would lose their minds.
That's a tough one. I think you might be right about that. You might be right about that, because you're striking real close to home when you're talking about versions of us that were smarter in the past, because we're all used to the dumb, apish, Darwinian paradigm and the Neanderthal idiots, drooling from the mouth, wandering around with clubs. That's how most people living in the modern world view our antecedents. What if they were much more ingenious than we are? What if they were, even genetically speaking, what if they were much more physically robust than we are? What if our antecedents were telepathic? What if we even lost some of the biological capabilities of our antecedents, not just the technology, but a lot of the biological capabilities, right? Well, that just scrambles the whole board for everybody, because we're thinking about apish Neanderthals. And when you say, no, it's the opposite. Those people were much superior Homo sapiens to us. That's a tough pill to swallow.
And it's gonna, it's like, be careful what you wish for, right? And now let's bend this towards ET. And before we get to everybody, yes, we're going to talk about this situation in Peru, but you can't have the conversation about Peru without also the conversation about what is going on with the media, Washington, D.C., Congress, the Department of Defense, and everything else that is happening all at the same time when it comes to ET, contact, UAPs, UFOs, whatever you want to call it, that suddenly it's okay to talk about. It's okay to investigate. It's okay to look into. Why this sudden shift in attitude towards aliens and contact?
Well, by the way, I've really enjoyed the conversation we just had. You have no idea how many hours I've spent talking about Peru aliens over the last week. And I'm happy, and I do like talking about Peru aliens. Don't get me wrong.
Okay, actually, let's jump back to that for a second, because this next question is about Peru. How long did you actually lived in the Amazon? You lived in the jungles for what? You spent a period of time there. How long and when?
I lived roughly a decade in the Amazon basin. And I dropped out of high school when I was 18 years old. By the time I was 19 years old, I was living in the Amazon basin. I spent a lot of my time in Tarapoto and Iquitos, and in the region surrounding Tarapoto and Iquitos. Tarapoto is the department of let's call it a state, the state of San Martin. Iquitos is the state of Loreto, and I've been deep in the Amazon up in Loreto. Loreto is, the Iquitos is where the Amazon River begins officially. That's very, very intense jungle. San Martin, the state of San Martin, is more high jungle. It's more like mountainous jungle, the foothills of the Andes, whereas Iquitos is like just flat Amazon. It's the tributaries of the Amazon River and sea level jungle. So I've been all around the region of Iquitos. I've been down by Nauta. I've been up further towards Brazil. I've been up the river Masan, which is right the neighbor, let's say, the neighbor region of Alto Nanay, where this alien stuff is happening. And I've been in Alto Nanay. And so I'm familiar, let's say, with this region of Peru.
How many people live in that village where this invasion?
I would guess, I don't know the exact number, but based on the other villages, assuming this is from the images, it seems to be a little bit of a larger village. It seems to have a plaza, So I would guess there's probably maybe 500 to 1,000 people living in that.
Yeah, exactly. It's tiny.
Yeah.
Big for a village on the Amazon, but
And I could be way off on that. I'm just taking a shot in the dark there, but I would guess 500 to 1,000 people live in that village.
and the attitude there is that you don't pick up the phone and dial 911 if you've got an issue.
No,
that's not happening.
You pick up your shotgun. I mean,
you defend the village, right?
Yeah. I mean, they might have like a satellite phone in the village. I'm guessing at that as well. I've never seen one in one of these villages, but usually if something happens, somebody's got to get in a boat and in some cases canoe out. This village probably has a motorized boat. I'm sure there's probably a taxi service that goes all the way from Iquitos to this village if it's got enough people in it. And again, the village appears to have a plaza, so it seems to be a larger village because typically you find these real little villages in the Amazon, just a couple hundred people. So yeah, I mean, this is extremely isolated. Okay, this is in serious malaria-ridden Amazon. I've contracted malaria 5 times in this area, so it's a red zone for malaria and also for illegal mining. Yes, illegal mining, river mining, mind you, not like cutting into the side of a mountain. River miners, and it's also these tributaries. They go up. A lot of them go up into Ecuador, and they connect to bigger rivers. And these tributaries that go from this is the northeastern quadrant of Peru. It's the Amazon connecting to the Amazon jungle of Peru connects to Ecuador, Bolivia, Colombia, and Brazil right there. And so you can imagine there's a lot of, I'm sorry, did I say Bolivia? No, Bolivia's in the south. Sorry. It connects to Ecuador, Colombia, and Brazil right there and up there in Loreto in this region. And so there's a lot of drug running that goes from Peru up into Ecuador, up through Colombia, and from, in many cases, from Brazil through Peru up to Ecuador and up to Bolivia, to the cartels, to traffic. And it's probably, in many cases, not refined cocaine. It's probably, a lot of it's cocaine paste, which is like the unrefined. And I've seen a lot of cocaine paste in the jungle. There's a lot of cocaine paste in the jungle. So people have to understand these are sort of like drug running canals that, and people would say, why would you go out in the middle of the jungle to run drugs? Well, that's precisely where you would run drugs, is in the middle of nowhere, up through the rivers and into the hands of the cartel. So there is a lot of that kind of activity there. And it's in some ways it's not the friendliest area of Peru to visit up in these areas because of the illegal, and I said illegal miners, but also the illegal loggers. There's a lot of illegal loggers, and these guys are like, some of these guys, and I've met a lot of these guys. Some of these guys are like villains from caricatures of villains from movies. I mean, so there's a lot of that sort of thing. So that's sort of the human aspect of that area, and there's a lot of great things about that region as well. I love that region. There's a lot of great things, but then let's talk about the potential non-human activity there. This region of Peru, and also just the Amazon of Peru in general, is rife with UFO activity. I've personally witnessed it. I've never seen aliens, but I've seen lots of UFO activity in the jungle specifically. And this region and this incident that we're about to talk about, prior to this incident, in the months preceding this incident, there was all kinds of high strangeness happening in this part of the Amazon. Different people were coming forward and making filing official complaints to the government, to the police, to the military about being harassed by UFOs, beams of some sort of, a laser beam coming down and hitting them or trying to pull them off the ground. And I believe there's a group of students from a university who saw strange beings walking in the jungle. And there's just a half a dozen, I don't have them here in front of me, but there's like a half a dozen incidents that happened prior to this particular one that's gained so much traction in the media. So I think that's an important context.
everything started on or around July 11th, and where this 15-year-old girl says that she was kidnapped and assaulted, and she had I've seen the pictures, I'm sure you have too, got a cut mark, a gash on her neck, and I mean that's horrific. And then that's where that's the date where we're looking at now, July 11th and forward, where the harassment started externally outside of the village, coming into the village. Do you have anything more to add to that July 11th date?
No, I mean, I can give you a general rundown of the incident. I mean, the 15-year-old girl, by the way, this is the village of San Antonio de Pintuyacu. These are the Iquitu tribe. These are members of the Iquitu tribe that inhabit this village. It happened in the district of Alto Nanay, northwest of Iquitos. Yes, as you correctly said, the incident began when this 15-year-old girl who was, and I think this was in broad daylight, by the way, I listened to the girl's testimony. She was sitting in the village, sort of in the outskirts of the village, and she was eating fruit. And suddenly she felt something grab her from behind, and she describes, looking at this thing, and it was a strange thing, and it appeared to have a mask, and she was tussling with it for a minute. She was even lifting up the mask for a minute. There's sometimes the story changes. There seemed to be like some sort of a beam of light or something that incapacitated her. She screamed. Obviously, she was terrified. She screamed and passed out. Apparently, she screamed loud enough to alert the other villagers. They came running over. They found her passed out, and she had a laceration in her neck, which apparently was the result of this altercation she had with whatever it was that tried to abduct her. So obviously, the villagers, they didn't know what was going on. She's unconscious. They don't know what's going on. For all they know, these are drug traffickers or something trying to abduct this girl, or human traffickers. And so they start running around the village. They start running through the jungle looking for the perpetrators. And apparently at some point in time, they realized, in their words, this was their realization, this is what they said, that what they found instead of human perpetrators were extraterrestrial beings, 7 feet tall, arrayed in silver armored bodysuits. They're likened to the Green Goblins from Spider-Man in that they had this like sort of body armor, these bodysuits with body armor. They didn't say they're green; they said they're silver, and they're wearing masks. In some cases, they're described as wearing masks. They say that their shoes, they had this strange footwear that had these discs on the bottom that projected a red light, with which these entities were able to float through the jungle and ascend into the air. And apparently these beings are bulletproof because they've discharged their shotguns and rifles at them at point blank range to no effect. The beings would just disappear or would lift off into the air. So that's the general testimony coming. I've listened to the villagers. I've watched the videos. It's important to say, which I'm sure you and your audience are very much aware of at this point, that there are a few videos from the incident that were captured by the villagers themselves. All the ones I've seen are at nighttime of the actual incidents taking place. And in one of the videos, you have a bunch of villagers running around frantically. All the women and children are huddled in the middle of the village. And the men are running around, discharging their firearms into the jungle, yelling, right? And they're yelling, there it is, there it is. And they're discharging their firearms. In another video, and maybe it's the same video that's been chopped up into two, but in the Peruvian media was showing this as two videos. In another video, you see a gentleman with a flashlight, and he's flashing it above a house, right above this house in the trees. So right there on the outskirts of the village. He's not even that far away from it. He's flashing the light up into the tree, and he trains the light on something in this tree or ducking behind it and up in it at probably 30 feet above the ground or so. And he starts to yell, there it is, there it is. And everybody's yelling and everybody's looking at this thing. And as the light is trained on this creature, if you freeze frame, if you take it into editing software, which I've done on a video on my YouTube channel, you take it into editing software and you go frame by frame, I'm going to contend that what you're looking at is what appears to be a large gray alien or insectoid type creature, or actually two at least. And it's very clear to me, frame by frame. You can actually even see the flashlight glowing off the eye.
You can see that.
Right, the large black almond-shaped eyes, the bulbous head, the typical mantoid, or whatever they call them, the insectoid-like or tall gray alien creature. Some people even say they can see the arm. I don't know if it's the arm. I do know there's some foliage in front. I do know there appears to be some branches in front. These entities are not static. They appear to be slightly ducking down, looking over. Their heads are slightly moving up and down, left to right. Now, having said that, am I saying that these were tall gray aliens? I'm saying I don't know, but they sure look like it. And could it be holographic or could it be CGI? Sure, it could be. I don't know. I'm just saying it's there. I mean, when these guys put their light on that tree, I'm looking at an insectoid. That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, he appears. Tell me if this felt the same way to you. It looks like, and it happens so quick, that the creature is looking straight ahead, but he kind of turns and looks at the villagers.
He turns.
You saw that,
he
right?
also looks down a little bit.
Yep.
He looks down a little bit, very slightly, and you can see two. There's two there. In one frame you can see two, like another kind of pops its head over. It's to me it's undeniable. People say, oh, it just looks like green pixelated blob. Well, it really doesn't. I mean, if you know what you're looking at, keep in mind these are Chinese knockoff smartphones recording in low light conditions, almost pitch black with just a flashlight. Okay, you're never going to get high resolution out of that. As much as people complain, I'm sorry, you're just not going to ever get high resolution. Even if you had a good camera, you'd be hard pressed to get anything high resolution out of that scenario. But what's really intriguing to me, and again, I want to make sure people understand, I'm not saying definitively it was tall gray aliens. I'm just saying I see tall gray aliens. Now, whatever that means, it means whatever it means. Is it people dressed up in suits? Is it holograms? I don't know. I'm just telling you, they're there. Is it CGI?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, this is, I've watched this and analyzed it. I've loaded it up in my software too as well, and frame by frame, and enlarged it and really looked at it closely. And I need everybody to understand, if you haven't seen the videos, that this creatures, they're behind. It's a house or it's a building, and you can see the roof. And behind it and above it, so you have a good. Well, I'm just talking about the height of the house,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So whatever it is behind this house. So it's dozens of feet away, or 50 feet away, and it's up above the ground, and it's of size. Right, so if it's that far away and above, and it's that big this is something large,
and so,
yes,
7-8 feet tall, exactly what the villagers were saying, by the way. And they could have hit it with a rock. I mean, they were that close. They could have picked up a rock and threw it at it.
And meanwhile, you're watching this video and you got the gunshots in the background, pop, 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 pop. It's like, man.
Exactly. That's right. Yes. And they're frantic. They are in a state of terror. And they say in the videos, we've been being terrorized by these extraterrestrials. That's what they say. Okay. And they were adamant, by the way, in this video, that these are not human beings. These are extraterrestrials. They're floating off the ground. They're disappearing. They're bulletproof. That's what they're saying in the video. So now I think we all know by now that these villagers, they actually made an official request. They demanded actually that the Navy come and protect them. They demanded it. They were scared to death. They said they're not getting any sleep. The men are up all night. They demanded that the Navy intervene. The Navy did show up on the scene. So did the police from Iquitos. So you have the Navy on site. They're doing a quote unquote investigation. And what do they determine? So mind you that the Peruvian press is taking this scenario deadly seriously. I mean, they're not joking about it. They're not playing clownish music in the background. They're taking this story very seriously in the Peruvian press. Okay, they almost look like they're terrified. And I was watching it very closely in the Peruvian press. There's no joking. There's no making fun of these villagers, right? The Navy shows up on site. Everybody's waiting to hear what the Navy's going to say. And what does the Navy say? It says, oh, we did an investigation and we have concluded that what's going on here is cartel-backed river miners, illegal river miners, are flying around this village with jetpacks, dressed up in these suits, terrorizing these people to try and drive them off their land. That was the conclusion, okay? And I'm going to tell you what, that is obviously circus ridiculous. All they did was they talked to the villagers, they heard the description of the beings that the villagers gave them, and they concocted a story that satisfied those details. In other words, these beings are floating off the ground. You know, the guy kept insisting, sir, I'm telling you, these are extraterrestrials. These are not, the village leader. These are not human beings. We shoot at them, they disappear. And so these Navy guys, whoever was in charge of this story, of concocting this cover story, had to account for these details. And you can't just say it was illegal miners, because what about the floating off the ground and the fact that they're bulletproof? Okay, well, jetpacks, and they're wearing body armor. Okay, illegal miners, they're wearing jetpacks, they have body armor. Well, where do they get the money for this? Oh, okay, the cartels. The cartels are backing them, so that explains how they would be able to afford these $400,000 jetpacks, right? So literally, the story was fashioned so that it would conform to the details that these villagers were saying. Now, I have contacts in Peru through a buddy of mine. I have my own contacts in the region, and then I have very, very high up military contacts through a buddy of mine here in the United States. And I was talking to him, and he was interfacing with one of our Navy contacts, a good friend of his, a gentleman I also met through this individual, my buddy here in the States. And he's interfacing with him. I said, ask him what he thinks, because this guy, he's a Navy guy. He's extremely well known. He's extremely well connected. And I said, ask him what he thinks about this incident. Does he buy the jetpack miner story? And his reply was, not at all. So look, there is a historical precedent. The miners and the cartels have terrorized the native tribes, these villagers, because these regions of the jungle legally belong to them. All right. So if you want to mine there, or if you want to run a petroleum pipe through their land, you have to play nice with them, number one, and you have to pay them, and you have to make a deal with them, and so forth, right? So rather than do that, the cartels and the miners have attempted to run them out of the region so that they can operate. And they have made use of the legends and the lore of the jungle to do it. They have. That has happened in the past. But the problem here, there's two problems here. And I would buy that story if it were not for a couple of details. Number one, there ain't no way that Peruvian river miners, are flying around in state-of-the-art, apparently silent jetpacks in the thick canopy of the Amazon jungle at night. No way. Sorry. Don't buy it. Not happening. Number one, not happening. Flying over the river. Okay. Flying over the river, flying around that village in the canopy. Forget it. Not going to happen.
You can't even walk through it, let alone
you can't walk through it without a machete in some of this area.
You can't do it.
You're not going to fly a jetpack around it. No. And all the noise and the ruckus that it would make and everything. And I mean, that's number one. Number two, being shot at point blank range. The village leader says, I shot one twice. Point blank range. He insists. Okay, and these guys are good shots. They're shooting animals in the jungle all the time.
Okay? That's
these
right.
Are dogs with guns, right? These are hunters. So I shot one twice, and he's stressing. He's in distress, telling this. It's not human. I shot it. And okay, body armor. Could you get shot point blank with bird shot? Sure. It would with good body armor, definitely. They're using bird shot primarily in the jungle. I know that, and they're also using rifles with probably, I don't know, probably small arms ammunition to shoot deer. There's nothing really big in the jungle that you're hunting, and so just small arms, right? Smaller rifle calibers, fine. But a bunch of guys firing at the same time. You're going to tell me that there's no blood? You're going to tell me that there's no reaction of the miner getting hit with maybe a couple beads escape between his armor and he yells out, right? Or something? Nothing like that, okay? Nothing like that. So you got the jetpack problem, you got the bulletproof problem, you got the disappearing problem. Okay, let's say the miners do have the jetpacks. Cartels gave them jetpacks. Okay, and they're bulletproof because they got a state-of-the-art body armor. How do you explain them disappearing? You're not going to disappear in the Amazon with a freaking jetpack on. You're not going to disappear. The very opposite. You're going to be so noisy and loud, and you know everybody in the village will know exactly where you are at all times with that jetpack on. And if you're even walking with that stupid jetpack, you're not going to get anywhere in that jungle. You literally have to fly if you got something that big on, because you're not walking anywhere in that jungle. So I'm sorry. I can buy the miners. I can buy the cartel. I can't buy the jetpacks. I can't buy that they're completely bulletproof. I can't buy that they disappear. And added to all those details, what about the video?
Yeah, the video.
What about the video?
And okay, and let me add a number 4, a point number 4. Why this girl was assaulted? Okay. If it was the miners, as the Navy said, how come somebody hasn't been arrested? If that was the case, why? We're talking about a 15-year-old girl that was assaulted. So if it wasn't aliens, right, and it wasn't, if you're saying it was the mine, why aren't you going to the miner camp? And by the way, we're using the term miners here rather loosely. We picture miners, a mining operation with big trucks and helmets and things and equipment and technology and LiDAR and everything else, right? the geophysicists coming. No, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about people that an indigenous culture of miners,
primitive scumbag river miners. That's who we're talking about. Primitive scumbag river miners. These are illegal miners. Yes. They have these very makeshift rigs. I've seen them. They still use mercury. And one of the reasons why they're so problematic is because, of course, they use the mercury they slew the bottom of the river, and then they use the mercury to separate the minerals and so forth. But then they take the mercury waste. What do you think they do with it? They dump it in the river.
Dump it in the river. They got generators running, pumping and
exactly right. Very noisy, very dirty.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. I've seen it myself.
And why would the cartels be working with these stupid river miners? Like the cartels have anything to gain from mining a little bit of gold in the river.
Now and this is this is where it leads to point number 5. If and you look at the tribal leader, right? The guy with the blue soccer jersey on, that in the interviews that says he shot twice. Okay, if it was river miners and the 15-year-old girl got assaulted by them, they're going to take it upon themselves to go and string somebody up. They're not. They are their own law, and that's the other part.
Let me give you a quick little story to demonstrate your point. I know a man named Emir Masinkai. He's a friend of mine. I haven't seen him in years, but he was a friend of mine from Loreto. He was the leader of the Awahun tribe. Okay, the Awahun tribe are the ones that wear the grass skirts and they got the blow guns, right, in the Amazon. Mm-hmm. And Emir was also on like a council of tribal leaders, and so he was friendly with a bunch of the other tribes in the region, like the Kandoshis and the other tribes in both Yurimaguas and Iquitos. And he told me a story one time. He said, because I was asking him about drug traffickers and stuff. He said, let me tell you how my tribe deals with drug traffickers. There were drug traffickers coming through his territory, his region that was allotted to his people. And they were making camps, and they're drinking, and they're doing all of the things that these drug traffickers do as they're running their drugs. And one night they were making camp in a particular part of the jungle, and so Emir Masenkai got together the men of his village. They grabbed their blow darts, which are rubbed. They rubbed the tips of the darts on the back of poison dart frogs. Okay, and they at nighttime they waited until all the miners were drunk and asleep around this campfire, and they snuck up in the jungle and they blow darted every last freaking one of them and killed them all. And they did it legally because that's their land and they had the right to do that because this was a hostile threat. There's no reprisal. They had the right to do that. That's how they deal with some of these people. That's how they deal with these. So it's not a one-sided thing. It's not that these poor villagers are being harassed and persecuted by the cartels and the miners. Yes, that's true to some degree, but they know how to deal with these people also.
They live in the jungle, man. They can take care of themselves. They've been taking care of themselves, and they know how to take care of business. And I was talking about this the other night on the show, Timothy, and this to be true. Now, I haven't been deep in the Amazon, but I lived in Panama for 4 years. Okay. And I've been in the jungle. I've indigenous cultures, and I've got a pretty good grip about what's going on. And let me just say this in all seriousness. The jungle is alive. The jungle is dangerous. And if you are a small village, right, on the Amazon, you are dealing with very serious threats every single day. I mean, crazy things live in the jungle.
Everything in the jungle wants to eat you.
Everything wants to eat you. It's a fact. And these villagers aren't weak. They're not timid. You're not going to push them around. And to see the terror on their faces and the way that they're reacting to this, this is a very serious threat to some very strong people.
My God, they're discharging their firearms into the jungle. I mean, they're fighting back. And so this is, what's really surprised me is how well received this ridiculous jetpack miner narrative has been. If you go online now and you look at videos and you watch, for example, I did a video on this the other day on YouTube, and it was just some video I did with my buddy as soon as it was sort of breaking, and we're just, hey, let's record what we're saying here. And it's got almost 1 million views now, but YouTube put an age restriction on it, so it's not showing up in algorithms anymore. But when I just lost my train of thought. I don't know where I was going with that, so I'm sure it'll come to me in a moment. I got a twinge of anger at YouTube as I said that, and it totally threw me off. It totally threw me off what I was about to say.
We were talking about.
No, I was talking about how people bought this miner thing. That's right. Okay, let me return to my thought. So regarding that video, I would read the comments in the video, and they're so hostile. And after this miner story broke, after this was concocted, right? What did I start seeing the comments? Oh, this is debunked. This has been debunked. Move on, debunked. And I'm like, oh, really? So the jetpack miner thing, you really buy that? That's it for you. That's good enough. Debunked. Move on. I'm sorry. Look, I'm willing to accept that this was not aliens. Sure, I'm willing to accept that this was the figment of their imagination. Fine. But I'm not going to buy jetpack miners. I'm sorry. I don't believe that these dumb river miners are flying around the jungle in state-of-the-art jetpack technology that's silent and they're bulletproof and they're disappearing. I don't buy it. It's not debunked. Something very bizarre is going on, and it is unresolved. Period.
Yeah, you're right. And there's one point that I kind of want to rub in one more time. These villagers are hunters. They provide for themselves and they survive the night. Right? That
Oh yeah, they go out into the jungle and they sleep in the jungle.
They survive. No, and they know how to shoot something. And to not take down a human, that's the easiest thing to shoot.
Or just run, or like think of this, okay? Here's a big jetpack guy. You're shooting at it, so you're already being aggressive with it. You got flashlights. Run up close to it and be like, okay, it looks like a guy in a suit or something, right? I mean, you could make that determination when if they're as close, if these jetpack miners, even the phrase is just comical to me. If these jetpack miners are up in the tree around the village and you've got your flashlight on it, I mean, that dude's just going to hang out there and not get caught. I mean, honestly, that dude's going to hang out in that tree and not get caught.
And not get shot
down eventually, right. Or he's got to make the loud noise with his jetpack, and apparently that guy's got a gray alien mask on top of it. I mean, the whole thing is stupid. Now I don't know if you saw this, and before I forget, I'm gonna throw another element of mystery into this story. During this incident, which began in mid-July, right during this incident. Previous to the incident and probably ongoing now, there is ongoing a training exercise in Peru. It's called Resolute Sentinel 23. And I'm going to read from the article. It's right off the government's air and space forces.com. Resolute Sentinel 23 is the third edition of the training exercise in Southcon, Southern Command, which involves roughly 1,000 personnel from the Air Force, Space Force, Army, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, and 8 partner nations, Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, Great Britain, Brazil, Chile, Panama, and Uruguay. And this project has been ongoing. It's began back in 2021. It's been ongoing, but it's really been ramped up in 2023. And these guys are operating. They're basing out of Lima, Peru, and much of the operation is happening in the jungle. There's this bizarre Resolute Sentinel. Now just think of that name, Resolute Sentinel. So you've got, again, the Air Force, Space Force, Army, Marine Corps, American, Coast Guard, and 8 partner nations, including Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, Great Britain, Brazil, Chile, Panama, and Uruguay. In Peru, specifically in the jungle in certain parts of this operation, running training exercises. And it just so happens that all this high strangeness is unfolding at the same time.
Yeah, right.
In the Amazon.
My father was in the Army, right? So that's why we were in Panama, the Southern Command, and back then the Canal Zone was still the United States, right? We've given the canal back in the Canal Zone. But back then, the Southcom that you just mentioned, those military exercises went on every year. I watched it happen. I watched everything firsthand. I lived on Fort Amador on the Pacific side of Panama. And you're absolutely right. And all of the member nations get together and participate. As a matter of fact, to your point, in Panama, they used to have the School of the Americas. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes, I have.
That is the military training school for all of Central and South America, where any general, any Air Force, any officer of any of the militaries goes there to the School of the Americas. And that's where you're trained as an officer. And then they go back to Paraguay, Uruguay, Ecuador, right? Peru, Brazil, Panama, Costa Rica, right? And that's part of that's Southcom. And the participation of everybody is inclusive. And so to have that going on at the same time as an alien invasion, high strangeness.
It's like the Predator movie. It almost, I mean, and again,
It's like the
I'm
Predator.
not
It
saying
is
this
like
is
the
what's
Predator
happening.
movie.
Let's for a moment just imagine the most fantastical, crazy scenario that we can in regard to what's been unfolding in the Amazon. Let's say that, and by the way, the governor of Loreto came out, I believe it was yesterday, on an interview and said that the kind of occurrences that were happening in San Antonio are happening in I think she named 5 different villages. Okay. So this isn't isolated to one village. So let's just imagine now that one of 2 scenarios, I'm going to paint 2 scenarios here. The first, let's imagine that the U.S. government is taking advantage of this training operation as a cover story to go play with some high-tech toys in the jungle. Maybe high-tech jetpacks, top secret equipment that is not available to the public in the public domain, right? And it probably wouldn't be jetpacks. It would probably be something, maybe some anti-gravitical technology that they're deploying there. And they are projecting themselves up from their shoes rather than a jetpack. Because no one talks about a jetpack in these stories, by the way. It's the shoes, right? So let's say they're out there and they're running some sort of operation in the jungle to see if they could fool these villagers or whatever. Okay, so it's like a big psyop thing, and we're testing our toys, we're playing with our toys, or there's somebody has an interest in making it look like it's aliens, but in reality, it's these special operators with high-tech, possibly reverse-engineered alien technology screwing around in the jungle doing this. That's scenario A. Is it possible? Sure. But there's another scenario, and this one's probably even more fantastical. Scenario B, that this operation is just a cover story for a covert conflict with non-human entities in the Amazon. In other words, there is heightened activity, there is a hostile alien presence in the jungle that is beginning to operate a little bit more aggressively maybe than before. And this operation is a cover for these special operators to go in, like the Predator movie, and combat them. And they wouldn't be going in with just, the kind of weaponry that we saw deployed in Afghanistan. They would be using all of the highest technology that we possess, Space Force is involved in everything, and we're getting in there and we're trying to drive these entities out or whatever. I don't know. Those are 2.
I don't think version 2 is fantastical at all. You would have to have a cover story.
Absolutely, you would.
And the military exercises, which are always happening in Central and South America. We are doing joint exercises. That's all they do, right? That's all the military does.
What is Great Britain doing in there? Is that normal? I don't know. I'm asking. Is it normal for Great Britain to be involved in Southern Command exercises?
No.
So what is Great Britain? And understand that Peru, Ecuador, and Colombia and Brazil all share borders in the Amazon up there where this incident is taking place. So is this a cover story for a covert operation in the Amazon? A, some sort of psyop operation where we're playing with our high-tech toys, or we're trying to create a scenario, an alien invasion, I don't know. Or B, are we actually going in there to fight an alien presence, to try and drive out an alien presence or something along those lines? Non-human entities, is it possible? I think it's within the realm of possibility that this is the whole thing, is that this whole operation is a cover story. This whole training exercise is a cover story for something else that's going on in the Amazon jungle.
Timothy, stay right there. I need to take a break. I needed to do it 30 minutes ago, but we were knee deep in it, man. So let's get this in. 5-minute break, everybody. We'll be right back after this. Stay with us.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Please visit all of our sponsors. We're taking a quick break here. All of the links are below. And we'll be right back. Join us November 10th, 11th, and 12th, 2023, live at the Luxor Hotel and Casino on the Las Vegas Strip, as Disclosure Fest Foundation and Fade to Black Radio presents Stairway to the Stars, a Human Origins Science and Technology Expo. With live talks, lectures, and workshops by world-acclaimed researchers and authors, featuring topics like human origins, ancient technologies, indigenous teachings, workshops, a mass meditation, yoga and sound healing, music, and so much more. This is Jimmy Church, by the way, and I'll be your host all weekend long. Don't miss our intimate sky watch and meteor shower over the infamous Area 51 airspace in Rachel, Nevada, with special surprise celebrity hosts guiding us through the night. This event will sell out. For more information and tickets, please visit disclosurefest.org. Hi, everybody. Jimmy Church here. Very special announcement, and that is we are shipping Fade to Black T-shirts again. It's been almost 2 years. We did a full upgrade to the website, so you can head over to jimmychurchradio.com. It's all simple to do, and it's right there. Remember, we broadcast 4 nights a week, Monday through Thursday. We bring you the best, the brightest, the most knowledgeable and amazing guests, the best conversations. We do that 4 nights a week. We also do 4 days a week. We broadcast the news, and we do that live too as well. It's not a one-man show. I do it with website support. I do it with producers. I do it with writers and artists. All contribute to the show. The best way to help support what we do here is with the Fade to Black T-shirt. And you can get your Fade to Black T-shirt one of 2 ways. First, go to jimmychurchradio.com, order a shirt. It's really that simple. You're going to get a tracking number, it's going to get shipped, and it's going to get autographed. The second way to get a shirt is with a Game Changer membership. Now, the Game Changer membership not only includes a free T-shirt, but you get a private email to me. You get unlimited commercial-free downloads. You have full access to the website, and everything includes free shipping, and everything is autographed. So help support the show. Get your Fade to Black T-shirt today. The links are below. You can just go to jimmychurchradio.com, and it's right on the website. So there you go. I'm Jimmy Church, Fade to Black. I'm so excited that I just have one thing to say. Gobekli Tepe. River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right. Welcome back. Our guest tonight, Timothy Alberino. We're talking about the alien invasion that appears to be going on down in Peru. Some very, very frightened villagers down there. And there's been assaults. There's been gunfire. They're defending themselves, and they're asking for help. And they're not getting that. And the whole thing is quite disturbing. And Timothy, welcome back. I brought up a point last week when discussing this, and in the chat, this is the misconception that people have, and it's funny where somebody will say something like they're an expert on something. But I want to you made this point earlier, and I need to stress this. You cannot walk through the jungle. You can't do it. You can't do it. And to run through the jungle, that's you have to hack your way through the jungle. That's how you do it, and you do it a couple of feet at a time. And when I made that comment, why do I say that with such confidence? Because I've done it, right?
That's
you can't.
Right, yeah.
It's brutal. The jungle is an insane thing to experience,
And I was watching in the comments, man, you can run through no, this isn't the forest in the back of your school. That's not what we're talking about here. And to have something disappear and run through the jungle like that while getting shot at and disappearing, that for me and for the villagers, they know what it's like to try to get through the jungle. You're not going to escape. You're
That's
not
right.
going to escape those villagers. Not
And you're
a
also not
human.
gonna, you're also not going to fly a jetpack around the canopy for how many days? Like 3 weeks every night, and not one of you is going to crash. Not one of you is going to have some sort of a malfunction, run into a tree. Not one, not a single guy. You're all perfect jetpack flyers.
Yeah.
Right?
We've all seen the jetpack videos, and they're impressive. They're impressive, but you're not doing that on the Amazon River. It's just it's just not going to happen. And
there was something also about this story that I didn't mention. The villagers and the people in this region and in the jungle in general in Peru, both the northern jungle and the southern jungles in Peru, they have this legend called the Pela Cara, the legend of the Pela Cara. What does Pela Cara mean? Face peeler. So the Pela Caras are face peelers, like skin your face. That's what we're talking about. And they say that the Pela Caras, they're known to abduct people from the villages and mutilate them, much like the cattle mutilations in the United States. Specifically, they strip the skin off of the face, so that's just like a white bleached skull, right? This is a legend. This is what they say in the jungle. This is one of the many legends, the Pela Caras, and it's prevalent everywhere. And there are some videos that have surfaced. I don't think anybody has found exactly the context. We do know that one of the videos does come from this region, generally speaking, and I featured it in my video on YouTube. It's this individual, this man who's got his face totally stripped off, and there's some police and a coroner there, and it's on the bank of a river in a village. I think he was dropped off there. And the man his face is gone. All you see is his skull. All you see is the bone structure of his face, not a scrap of flesh or tendons or anything like that. It's just white bone. And what's really interesting is people right away, and rightly so, will say piranhas. Because that does happen. Piranhas can strip you to the bone, yes. The piranhas really nick up the bone a lot. Their teeth, they go crazy, right? So you're gonna get a lot of nicks on the bone. They're not there, and also the problem with the piranha theory is that this individual, his neckline is cut very smoothly.
yeah, it's clean. As far as I know, right? Piranhas don't in a nice neat.
No,
nice, neat surgical
they're not
line.
carrying scissors.
They're not.
No,
and I don't want to make light of the situation. It's a horrible
it's
image.
terrifying. Yes. And also, let me say that the cartels, I don't know if the cartels in Peru do this, but certainly Mexican cartels do cut people's faces off and stitch them to soccer balls and other heinous things. They do. And they're very good at it. But this looks like it was done with such precision, because those are messy affairs, by the way. I actually saw a video of something to that effect, that very thing, actually. I don't recommend watching anything like that. But the result was very bloody and very messy. Okay? This was clean. It looked like it had just been cut with laser precision, and it just so happens that it occurred apparently this year, and in that general region.
Now, I think the point needs to be made and cemented in everybody's mind that there are legends of the jungle. There is folklore. There's stuff that's been handed down for millennia in Central and South America and throughout the world. We know that. We've all got the troll under the bridge story, right? And if that was the case here, I don't think the leader of the village, I didn't catch his name, the guy in the blue shirt, he would say it. They would go there. That's not where it's the exact opposite of that. And if the miners in the cartel were indeed wanting to freak them out, I don't think they're going to be attacking a 15-year-old girl. They're going to spread ghost story rumors. They're going to spread the other stuff that they're used to hearing.
Or they might abduct the girl and brutalize her or whatever to try and strike terror into the hearts of these people, or try and, tell them she's dead unless you vacate this particular part of the jungle. Because it wasn't just the village. These guys, this tribe has oversight over a large swath of jungle out there. So they might want to be operating in a particular area. Hey, you let us operate here. Don't bother us, or she's dead. Something like that. I don't know. And that's all fine. I can buy all of that. I've got no problem with that. These are nasty people, these illegal river miners and these cartels. These are nasty people, really, really scum of the earth criminals. It's all the additives to the story. And it's important to also note that there is some talk by the villagers of the beings being cloaked with hoods, like they're cloaked in these dark this dark fabric, and they've got these hoods on in some of the cases. That relates directly to the Pelakata legend, and that might be confabulation in this particular story, because the beings that we see in the tree are not cloaked.
No,
but that's not to say that some of them aren't. But according to the Pelakata legend, the face peeler legend, these beings, they approach these villages, they're cloaked, they're stealthy, they abduct you, they mutilate you. That's the legend of the Pelakata. So that's a very interesting detail there as well, that sometimes they're describing them as being cloaked. So again, I've got no problem if you're going to tell me, hey, there's a village, miners are dressing up like, the chupacabra or something, running around trying to scare these people. They're abducting people. I got no problem believing that. I know that they would do that. But when you start throwing in jetpacks and magical powers or superhero powers, I'm sorry, I can't go there.
Yeah, and there seems to be the same. There's a method of operation here that's in play. One, you have the official military come in and give their version of this and dismiss everything, and you attack the story, you attack the people instead of trying to solve something. And we're going through that now with David Grush, which right. I find that very, very interesting, where he does this testimony, says, we've got flying saucers and we've got bodies on ice, and I'll give you the addresses. I can tell you exactly what's going on. And then what happens after that, right? The Intercept publishes an article attacking his PTSD and some of the situations that he went through mentally, private medical stuff. So you don't go after the facts that were presented under sworn testimony. You attack the man and you discredit him, and you go after his mental health and his past. It's the same method of operation, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And it's, I think in both, obviously with Grush, we're looking at an attempt to discredit him, because they want to put a cap on this disclosure thing. Somebody wants to, enough. You've gone far enough, Congressman. Enough. Shut it down. And then so now they're coming out with the dirty tricks to try and shut this thing down. And in the jungle, I think we're looking at a live cover story that was concocted on the spot to satisfy the details that the villagers were describing. And in both cases, both in here in the United States with Grush, a lot of the A lot of people are buying that. Oh, okay, he's got PTSD. Okay, that explains it. All right. Okay, now I get it. Now I get why he would risk his life and blah 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 and do this to himself. Okay, he's got PTSD. So there you go. Again, debunked. You know, they wash their hands of it, move on. Same thing in Peru. Oh, okay, miners. Okay, jetpacks. Okay, cartels. All right, good. Debunked. Satisfied. Next. And I'm really disheartened by how many people are buying the narratives and the smear campaign. Grush, one of the reasons why the man came out, it is crystal clear. He was being threatened, not just his job, not just his livelihood, not just his pension, his life and that of his family. The man was being threatened by private aerospace contractors or security companies, his life. Okay. So that's a really, really, really strong motivation to go public with something. If you start to pry into something, you get too far, you start getting these death threats, especially if you have PTSD. My God, especially if you have PTSD. What do? Well, if you're smart, you do precisely what Grush did. Exactly. There was a channel already created, through Chris Mellon and these other guys. In Congress, there's a channel created for whistleblowers now that did not exist previous to this, right? So why do we got a whistleblower now? Because we have whistleblower protections in place now that were not there before, A, and B, because we have a media that is now sympathetic to the UFO story. You're not a nut job anymore if you talk about UFOs. Those are two conditions that didn't exist prior to Grush or prior to 2017, right? Those two conditions now exist. And so what ought we expect? We should expect a whistleblower to come through, and especially a whistleblower who has PTSD and who's being threatened by private contractors, right? What would you do? The smart play is you go public. You go right through the channel that's created. You go to Congress. You take advantage of that whistleblower pathway, and you go public. That's what you do, and that's exactly what the man did.
And the points that he did, right, all correctly. He goes to the IG. He presents the IG with the classified documents. He tells them what's going on. He lawyers up. He files the proper paperwork. He wants his protection because what's the alternative, right? And if you're in that position, right, you do things properly. And he did all of that. And then the second and probably, for me, the most significant part of all of this is the photograph of Graves, Grush, and Fravor all standing there with their hands raised, taking the oath.
Yes, they're going under oath. They're putting their reputations online. They're under the threat of perjury. And what are they doing? They're telling the exact same story that they've been telling all along. They didn't change any details. They didn't add anything new to it. They elaborated based on some of the questions they were asked. But all they're doing is confirming what they've been saying. And what they've been saying, especially what Grush has been saying, conforms entirely to what ufologists have known for decades. He's not concocting some new grandiose story. He's literally just affirming what we've known for decades because of good ufologists, especially the old school ufologists like Leonard Stringfield and like Hynek and these other guys and Valet and these great old school ufologists, and also confirming, by the way, guys like the testimony of Bob Lazar and some of these other whistleblowers who've come out in the past. So there's being in the UFO space, I'm looking at this going, yeah, I can't disagree with anything he said. Nothing he said is like a red flag or some sort of new weird thing. He's literally just confirming what all of us who've been in the UFO space have known. Yeah, of course there have been crash retrieval programs. Yes, no question about it. Of course there have been bodies, and of course there's been reverse engineering programs. So, I mean, and that's why I sometimes get I get upset with people who absolutely refuse to believe anything. Look, having a high degree of skepticism with media, with narratives coming out of the media and government entities is healthy, especially in this day and age. And we all know why. Very healthy. I encourage it. But as I always tell people, You don't go full retard. You don't think everything's a psyop. Don't think every single thing that happens is a controlled narrative. Every single thing's a psyop. Everything's a setup. That's called paranoia schizophrenia, or schizophrenia paranoia. That's what that is. And don't go there. That don't go there. You need to be able to step back and understand why Grush would say the things he does. Does it conform with what ufologists have been saying for decades? Okay, yes, it does. And there's logical explanations for this stuff outside of PSYOP and false flag and Project Bluebeam. That's my little rant.
Well, but and to take it a step further, because you're absolutely correct. But to take it a step further, for somebody to go into in front of a congressional committee and take an oath on live television and say these things about aliens, you're just not going to do that.
Especially when you got the full force of the intelligence community against you, and the Pentagon and elements of the media who are going to, if you say anything false, they're hoping you say something that's provably false so that they can tear you to pieces. That's right. The environment that guy's raising his hand and swearing that his testimony is true. That's the environment. And I don't know why people have a hard time understanding that. And this is, and I talked to Richard Dolan about this on a couple of occasions, and Richard has made an observation that I think is so important when discussing this topic. There are obviously two divergent and opposing narratives here. It's not one. There's two. There's NASA, the Pentagon, and now the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Milley, who are coming out and saying, no, it's not. We don't have any evidence that UAPs have anything to do with non-human entities. And there's no evidence of crash retrievals or bodies. Okay, that's their narrative. There's your official narrative, right? And then you got the whistleblowers who are coming out and saying the opposite. So you have two dueling narratives. There isn't one PSYOP narrative going on here. There's obviously people within the intelligence community and probably the military who want some level of disclosure and who are supporting Grush and probably picked up the phone and called him and said, man, go forward with this. We got your back. We're supporting you. And then there's others within the intelligence community and the military who would like nothing less than to put a bullet in the guy's head right now. There's a dueling narrative. There's a factional conflict underway in the deep state.
You brought up Richard Dolan, and one of the, I've spoken to him about this, and I'm sure you have too. His book AD After Disclosure lays out a bunch of different narratives and possibilities. And before I read the book, my brain was, let's go back about 10 years. Was saying disclosure is going to happen because of something that the government is not in control of. Now, yes. I don't know what that element is, right? I don't know what it is. Could it be a little USB flash drive, with the terabyte of data, floating around and they know it and it's about to, could it be something like that? Could it be a data dump? Could it be a WikiLeaks situation? Could it be somebody like David Grush? Could it be something that on its way to Earth and NASA's tracking it and they have a date and they've got to talk about, I don't know what the different, what's going to play out. I don't, but something is happening. Right? There is a reason for all of this to be out in the open all of a sudden. I just don't know. I just don't know what it is.
And keep in mind, the government, the deep state, let's say even MJ12, if we want to go deep, they cannot control the phenomenon. They can't control the phenomenon. They're not in control of it. Maybe aspects of things, but they're not in control of the phenomenon itself, the UFO phenomenon. All they can control is the narrative. That's it. And what we see is the Pentagon scrambling to control the narrative. And they have to deal with the cards that they're dealt. Just like you said, if there's some like a thumb drive that's found or a whistleblower or whatever, they got to deal with it. And they can't necessarily stop it from happening, and they can't stop the UFO activity, and they can't stop the alien abductions, but they can try and craft the narrative and throw in disinformation and try and smear people. That's all they can do. And that's exactly what we've been witnessing for the last several years. They've been doing it over time. So they come in and they don't want the UFO topic to get out of their control. So what do? They come in and they embrace it, but they embrace it in a very particular way. We're gonna start from 2017 onward. We don't want to talk about UFOs. We don't want to talk about all the other skeletons in the closet from decades of ufology. No. We're going to start now. Let's talk about anomalous phenomenon. We don't know what it is. We're going to investigate this together. We're going to start Arrow at the Pentagon to head up this investigation, our UAP investigative body, and we're going to be more open with the public. It's like they're controlling the way we talk about this phenomenon now. That's the whole point. They don't want you to talk about the old school UFO stuff. They don't believe me. They don't want to have a conversation about alien abductions. Absolutely not. They don't want to have a conversation about the hostile and murderous cover-up that's been underway for decades regarding this issue. No. They don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about bodies either in reverse engineered technology. They don't want to talk about that. They just want to talk about anomalous phenomenon. That's what they want to talk about. We don't know what it is. It could be this, it could be that, and they just want this amorphous thing. And when you start to bring definition to it, like Grush and Fravor and Graves, it makes them nervous and it makes them angry.
And when they and I want to thank you, by the way, before we run out of time. Great conversation. Look forward to the next time.
My pleasure.
You're on with us, and there's some other stuff I need to talk to you about tomorrow, and we will deal with that. Okay, but and part of it is what we were talking about earlier today too, as well. My phone has been going off during the entire show tonight. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. Is this the UAP task force? They wanted to go from the Nimitz forward, right? And they want to look at the military side of it. They haven't talked to any civilians. They haven't talked to anybody else. There is one case that is military, United States Air Force. All the witnesses are alive and the paperwork exists, and that's Randall Shim.
Oh yes,
and so that's right there in front of you. You want to talk about why not just back it up just a little bit?
Oh, they don't want to back up.
No, they don't.
They want to start talking from here forward. 2017, the Nimitz incident. That's where they want the conversation to begin.
That's it. And Randall Shim is right in front. Randall Shim is such an important case for so many reasons, but I think that the biggest reason is we have everybody alive, right? Everybody can go and answer questions.
That's right.
Stacks of paperwork, all the medical records, all the data. We're talking about a leased American United States Air Force base in the United Kingdom with United States Air Force personnel. The deputy base commander, that Colonel Holt, was a participant and a witness, right? And it's right there, but they don't want to. They don't want to discuss that. And I just find that funny. If you want to discuss military stuff, this case and the Nimitz encounter is fantastic. I mean, Fravor's a great witness, and Alex Dietrich and everybody else in the Princeton crew. I understand that. That's cool. Randall Shim is what we should be discussing. And that's I just think that we need to move this forward.
I totally agree.
Yeah, I think wouldn't that have been? It should be the next hearing. Actually, we should have Peniston up there, Burroughs. Holt.
Oh yes, I agree. Yep. Let's start
And
digging
land.
into the classic ufology. Let's start getting into these stories that have so much data. Let's go there. That would be amazing. And that's what Congress, you know what, I'm going to say this right now. I know we're running out of time. That UAP committee in Congress, they need immediately, they need ufology 101 immediately, because they are woefully unprepared for this conversation.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting, and then I'll say goodnight, is okay. All right, man, I need to end the show. But here's the deal. When you and I were kids, you're younger than me. I'm going to be 60, okay? But when we were kids, Congress, the Senate, those were old gray farts. Right? They were not cool. They were not young. They didn't listen to Led Zeppelin, right? Let alone, but what that committee, that's a younger generation. They have a different approach and attitude when it comes to ET. And their interest is there. They have a different way of looking at it than the old school. And that's what gives me hope.
At least some of those members, yes, they want the truth. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Timothy. Behave and be well. We'll give you a call tomorrow, and we'll pick things up from there. Thank you so much, my friend. Have a good night. Timothy Alberino. Now, Timothy, thank you so much. The links for Timothy, timothyalberino.com. The links are below. They're over on our website, and they are throughout social media. And with that, I'm going to get out of here before I run out of time. And to let everybody know that tomorrow night, Kim Carlsberg is here. That's right. Kim Carlsberg. I am so looking forward to tomorrow night. Thank you so much, Timothy. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Thank you to Dennis and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and this broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2023 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Until tomorrow night with Kim Carlsberg, I want you to be safe. Gobekli Tepe.